Now, is this the chart that picked the peak for the Canadian real estate sector? This is important because from a long wave perspective, we knew that they were going to extend the cycle as far as possible because there's this belief that governments and central bank can thwart the long wave evolutionary social cycle. Mathematically, that was impossible. So let's take a look at the chart, and I'm sure of one thing. Let me just adjust this. You probably have never seen this chart either because it's a long wave perspective. Okay. So what I do here is very simple. I asked real estate agents a long time ago. This was actually designed a decade ago, and I updated up until 2019's data. By the way, that's the median variant. It's not high end or low. It's just to acknowledge the cycles, and there'll be an over growth in population and under, so it smooths out the cycles just to make it fair, right? So there's no biased aspect of the model, right? We just want to know. So I asked them the question, really simple. When typically, I know that's changed, of course, when typically people buy their first home, right? That would be new demand, right? New demand. By the way, this in the future, it does take into account an immigration. In spite of we have a short-term immigration boom, that won't continue when the economy turns down hard. There'll be a backlash against governments to stop it. And we did that during the 1930s. When the economy turned down hard, we completely shut down immigration. And then once the economy was on its strong footing, we opened the floodgates again. So that's going to happen again. Again, this is always a long wave of perspective. Now, the second part of this chart is new. Harry Dent, who forecasted one of the few forecasters of the real estate collapse in Japan, couldn't understand why its real estate sector never recovered. He called it correctly, and he's a demographer, right? There's a small group of individuals. So it was interesting. And then it became obvious. And this is a issue with most of the world. Even Neil Howell acknowledges that this factor, that is the world is aging very rapidly, and demographics, or the typical demographic pyramid, peaked in the 1971, just when another set of Malthusians appear that, we've got too many people on the planet. You know what? They're always wrong. And I mean, that's another a topic we can address from a long wave perspective. But anyways, what he noticed is there was a huge amount of supply. And if you don't know the story, maybe you're under the age of 50, is that Japan was going to take over the world. It had unbelievable growth, high savings, super investment in technology. They were just doing everything right. Except they had a massive credit real estate bubble. And Canada has now surpassed that. We just don't learn, do we? Anyways, well, we can't do anything about it, right? We can't really control the external factors of ignorance, stupidity, and those who haven't learned from history. All we can do is take the information and have a positive outcome for ourselves, our family, our friends, and our businesses, right? So what I wanted to do, again, I'm always curious, and a long wave. I took over 200 years of data. Of course, most of it's from Stats Canada. It was hard to find this data. And then the other data was the future prospects for population into the future. Does that make sense? And I spliced it together, and you get this beautiful graph. And notice again here, you get this real estate peak in 1960, 1991, last year, 2022, and another one in 2048. But you notice that it goes sideways here. It's interesting. Again, we're not taking a recent immigration because they don't have the capital. Immigrants typically, now we use my parents as an example, come to this country, have to find a job. They're usually not paid as much, take about 5 years, save up to buy a place. But prices were reasonable. Only the wealthy can afford to buy a home in Toronto. and most of Canada. What does this chart telegraph? We have the initial baby boom from 60 to 91 and the millennial boom from 2000 until last year. And you can see there's a bear market into the 2030s. Now, what I haven't done, I should update this chart, but look at the bottom, the blue. That yellow line, by the way, is an exponential trend line, not linear, exponential. And notice that at the same time of the peak here, we have an accelerating exponential line that is growing faster, which will provide a huge amount of supply. So you can see that even though this cycle turns up in 2032, early 2030s, we will still have continuing supply coming onto the market. Hence, we could have a very, very extended bear market in real estate until the mid-century. Highly likely, just based on supply and demand. This does not take into account the price of credit, which is more important to the long wave, incomes, or the amount of speculations in real estate. That will, when the system collapses, it'll provide a huge amount of supply. Interesting. I know that you're going to find this chart extremely informative. And now, this doesn't take into account, of course, the current immigration. But again, if it was relevant, if they were born here, sure, and they've saved it now, but they don't. And we've seen that already with the numbers. One other aspect, this doesn't take into account the spike in unexpected deaths that we've seen. But again, I want to take these external factors. They can cancel each other out. The most important thing is, what does this tell us? And if you look at one other aspect, if you go way back in the 1930s, we had a real estate collapse. And in the 1870s, we had a real estate collapse, but there was rising demand. So to suggest that demand and supply is the only factor that determines the price of real estate is ignorant of understanding what drives these cycles, or the Kuznets cycle, right? So anyways, I wanted you to see that. And again, I'm really enjoying this format. It just shows you how ignorant I am. I should have done this a long time ago, because a lot of people are finding this very educational. You know, this channel has grown very quickly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, if you have specific questions, what do you think? Is that pretty straightforward? Supply and demand, right? And this is very unique. This current supply-demand issue, if you think about it, is very different. We've never had this problem. Even in the past, when real estate prices collapsed, we never had a demand issue. But since the demographics and the birth replacement rate pretty much collapsed around the world after 1971, it has a negative impact on real estate in the future. And that's why I believe that I made a post today on Twitter that I believe this is going to be a much longer real estate bear market than anybody thinks. The only thing would change my view if there is a substantial collapse in prices into 2032. I don't believe that's going to happen. 50% is an easy forecast. And I know a lot of people think that's extreme, but it's a leveraged asset dependent on cheap credit. ARC investments dropped over 80, and that is capitalism, right? These are industries that are going to rock your world. So to think that when we have real estate overvalued in Southern Ontario by 75% and BC, and to suggest 50%, I mean, look, it dropped 25% in the early 90s, and this is 3 times larger. We have to drop 50% to get to the levels of valuation 89. And valuations and inflation are an important metric regarding the future return on investment. Simple. Just anybody should know that. Okay, now I have to address this, and this is coming up often, and I will talk about the model. If you want to have access, that since I'm not an advisor anymore, if you want to subscribe to a model, what to do with the capital then the Substack for now is the only place you have access to, right? If you want to become a paid subscriber, it's only $20 a month. You have access to the model. My 23 years of building this model from a very long bear market globally in real estate during the 90s, and I avoided the massacre of 2000 and 2008. And I've just improved on it, and that's why all this was being launched. So you have access to it. By the way, it's going to be AI enhanced pretty soon. I'm going to input all this information I have, the model, the book that I'm writing, be inputted all in there, so it's easier for me. I don't have to, it's just all the work to input all the data that I have that forecasted and build these models. That makes sense? And the reason why, again, that I can't go specific because I'm not an advisor, right? You should work with an advisor if you're interested in financial planning. I was one for 23 years, but the model has to be consistent. So it's, in simplicity, it's very easy. The long wave leads, then the Kuznets cycle, then the business cycle. These are three major components of the model. Valuations are important. And now all three are turning down, and it just telegraphs and where to allocate the capital. And anybody who's been following me on Spaces know that the model went to negative last year, and it's still correct. It's heavily invested in cash, but that's all I can do. And it has to be consistent so that I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're in the life cycle, but if it's a consistent story, then it's fine. Because you can't say that I recommended something now and then it's later, because you're not following an expert, and he or she could recommend to do something today, but it could change. So this model could change in the fall if we get a substantial downturn in the economy, because it'll be counter to the narrative, right? When it's overvalued, an aging business cycle, we step back and protect the capital. When there's opportunity, the model will switch, right? It's not based on what I think. It's based on history and the inputs that I put in there. So if you want guidance what to do, because it will change during economic winter. We're not there yet, but look at Japan from 89 until presently. It still hasn't recovered to its old high in 89. I mean, look at the US and Canada between 1929. I think it took until the late 40s before it recovered. And if you were able to sidestep, and those who subscribe to the Dow theory, the collapse from 89 to 32, you did spectacularly well. That's what it's designed for. The timing was, of course, I launched this because I knew the timing was there and the public would be interested. So that's where you can access the model, and I will do a short video to simplify how it works, right? It's a lot of it has to do from quadrative stuff, Michael Alexander's great book on the quadrative cycle, and Martin Pring's book, the Business Barometer, is simply, when I was learning technical analysis over 20 years ago, I didn't realize one of his books had a quadrative model that he uses for his clients in the US. I said, why don't I make a Canadian model? And it keeps me honest because it's data dependent, not what somebody on TV says or whatever. Okay, so I hope that helps. Again, if you want access to, go to my Substack account or my website where there's a link there. On YouTube, also, I'll provide the link. You can access it there. You can try it. Try it for a couple months. You don't have to invest the full amount. I'm not taking your capital, and see how it works. And I update at least once a week what's happening and what the model's allocation is, and if there's any kind of changes. And it always will be counter to the trend. The obvious thing, it's extremely, unbelievably bearish on real estate. That's the giveaway I'm giving you for reasons that I've mentioned in the past. Okay, so I hope that helps. And again, I appreciate the questions because I'm going to try to answer them as quickly as I can, but not specific. Okay, I can't get into specific advice. If you want to know something about the long wave, you give me an idea, and I can probably post in a future post about the long wave. So I'm taking the ideas from what you are saying, and don't forget the notification bell, and that'll alert you. This is what I do. There's certain people that I follow who are specialties and really in the technology, who are brilliant in their field. I've always said my success and my insight comes from I'm able to find the best in the world, and there'll be a video on that topic, who I follow, what books I've read. It's on my website, by the way, if you're interested in the long wave. And the website is really for students of the long wave. It'll include everything, including to the link to the model, but everything there. I'm slowly adding dates, turning points, and I've updated the website with the turning points since the first industrial revolution, right? Spring, summer, fall, the monetary wave, and then economic winter. So we haven't entered economic winter. That's still ahead. Okay? As always, we will talk soon.